is Amelia, and I'm an art teacher with Artists for Kids in the North Vancouver School District. Today I'm going to share with you the artwork of a Canadian artist named Jane Ash Poitras, as well as an art making activity inspired by her work. Jane Ash Poitras is well known for her mixed media paintings, her collages, and her prints. Today we'll look at this mixed media painting called Shamanic Journey. Jane Ash Poitras is Indigenous and of Cree descent. And she was born in the northern community of Fort Chipewyan in Alberta and grew up in Edmonton. And before she studied the arts, she studied microbiology and worked in the sciences, but then moved on to study art, focusing on printmaking, painting, and sculpture. Jane Ash Poitras' artwork often reflects her own journeys in search of knowledge, inspiration, and spiritual insight. And she uses research and mixed media processes to explore the topics of Indigenous history, culture, and politics. And her work often examines the impacts of colonialism, both present and past. And through images and text, she represents the racist practices and systems that have denied and outlawed Indigenous language and culture in Canada, such as the residential school system. She also explores in her art the experience and practice of preserving Indigenous cultural knowledge. So today we're going to focus on the First Peoples principles of learning. And specifically, we're going to think about the principle that states that learning is reflective, relational, and focused on connectedness. And if you're interested in learning more about the First Peoples principles of learning, you can click on a document that I've included below this video on the AFK website. And we're also going to consider the following questions. What role does active listening play in a journey of learning and unlearning? And how can we communicate our own learning journey using the languages of the arts? So take a look at this mixed media painting. One thing that's important to know is that it's actually very large. It's taller than I am. And it's very different to see it in person compared to seeing a small image of it on a screen. When you see it in person, it feels like you can almost walk right into the space of the artwork because it's so big. Now, what colors, shapes, and symbols stand out to you in this artwork? We can see circles repeated through it, sometimes even circles within circles, which can give us a feeling of looking into a tunnel. We can also see the symbol of the teepee repeated. Jane Ash Poitras has used many different kinds of lines and marks, some of them leading us into the circle that is near the middle of the artwork. The title of the artwork is Shamanic Journey, and a shaman is a religious or mystical expert who, in Indigenous cultures, functions as a healer, a prophet, and a caretaker of cultural tradition. And shamans are often responsible for coordinating spiritual and cultural ceremonies. We can look closely and see that there are 4 different photographs collaged into the artwork, each representing a type of spiritual ceremony. And the word spirit is included at the top of the artwork. In the center of the work are some handwritten words that explain the spiritual significance of the teepee, and they end with the sentence, "The circle is sacred." At the top of the artwork is a mirror, and it's embedded within the canvas. Why do you think Jane Ash Poitras might have included this object in her artwork, and what might it symbolize? When the artwork is hanging on the wall, it can be tricky to move around the room and find a way to see your own reflection within the artwork. Why might the artist have provided viewers with an opportunity to see themselves within her artwork and within this spiritual journey that she's representing? There's a lot of detail to explore in this mixed media painting by Jane Ash Poitras, and we've only just begun to do this today. But inspired by her mixed media process and by the theme of a journey, we're now going to work on our own artworks that represent our own journeys of listening and learning. You'll need some simple materials to create our art project today. Firstly, you'll need a piece of paper. And this piece of paper that I'll be using is 11 inches by 24 inches, and it's a bit of a thicker piece of paper. And you will also need a pencil and an eraser. And you'll also need a Sharpie, a black ink pen or a black marker. You'll need scissors, a magazine that you can cut up, and materials to add color with, such as pencil crayons, watercolors, markers, or oil pastels. Before we begin our art activity, we will first think about what it means to be an active listener and what role listening plays in our learning journey. What does active listening look and feel like? You might want to pause this video for a moment and jot down some words or ideas about what you think it means to actively listen. Some ideas or actions might include not interrupting, paying close attention to the person who's speaking. If you're with another person, showing that you're listening through body language, such as leaning in, maintaining eye contact, or nodding. Putting aside your own distracting thoughts, which can be hard to do. Not forming an argument or response while you're listening. Repeating back what the speaker is saying. And asking questions if you don't understand, but waiting until the speaker is done first. Lately, I've been paying close attention to the current political events in the United States and in Canada, where people are protesting and speaking out against anti-Black racism and the unjust systems that are in place in our societies. And I've been thinking a lot about the communities that I'm part of here in Canada and my own role as a settler, as a parent, a community member, an artist, and an art teacher. And I've been listening to voices that I encounter through the news, through social media, and through conversations that I have with my own family members, my coworkers, and my communities. I'll share with you today an art activity in which we'll explore some ways that we can record ideas that we encounter through active listening, and ways that our listening can then impact our action. And everyone's learning journey is different, and I'll share with you some ideas for ways that you can record your own listening and learning, but your process and your art will definitely look different from mine. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is take my big piece of paper and I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise. So I end up with a long and skinny piece of paper once I'm done. So I'm just going to be careful to do this so it's nice and even. And once I've folded it in half, I'm now going to fold it in half this way. And now I want to have 6 equal sections in this piece of paper. So far I have 2 and I want 6. So I'm going to start on this side and fold my piece of paper into just 3 sections. So I'm not perfectly measuring these sections. I'm kind of loosely folding to begin with to see that they're pretty much equal. And once I've loosely folded my sections, I will press them down and press down those creases. And then I will do the same thing on this side. Again, I want on this side, I will have 3 sections again. So I fold it once, and then I fold it again and press it down. And I want them to be pretty even. Now, when I open it up, I should have my 6 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I want them to fold back and forth, kind of like an accordion, and that's not what they're doing right now. So I'll start here, and then I will adjust my folds like this. So it goes forwards and then backwards, and then forwards, backwards, and like that. So when I open it, I have a kind of a zigzag pattern, and my paper can stand up on the table like this. I looked through magazines and found examples of people in profile or from the side to represent myself.
And I cut out a few different options, and I'll experiment before choosing one, and now I'll trace it with pencil.
And again, this will be representing myself on the last panel. And now I'm going to look at the first panel of my journal. And so I'm thinking about ways that I can record things that I've been hearing, voices that I've been listening to, sources of information that I've been paying attention to. And so I'm going to later include some words, but for now I'm going to represent these voices and bits of information that I've been hearing as lines. And I've been listening to the news, I've been listening to podcasts, I've been reading the news, I've been talking to people, and a lot of information has been coming in my direction. And sometimes it gets all kind of tangled up as it comes towards me, and it can be a lot to take in and a lot to make sense of. And so I'm just representing this tangle of voices and information that's coming to me and how it kind of feels to me sometimes. And so in the next panel, I'm going to think about some of the specific words that I've been hearing that some of the people I've been paying attention to have been repeating. And so one of these phrases or groups of words that I've been noticing has been repeated a lot is an idea of amplifying voices and thinking about ways that I could create supportive or respectful spaces for other people's voices, maybe voices that don't get listened to as much, and spaces where people could share information or tell their own stories in their own words. And so I'm going to think about a way that I could write these words, amplify voices. And next I'm going to think about some of the sources of information that I have been paying attention to and where some of these different voices have been coming from that I've been listening to. So you could think about, what sources of information do you listen to? How do you encounter different voices, different information, different stories? And now I'm going to think about some other words that have been really coming up in conversations and discussions about current events, current political events. And one of these words is power. I'm thinking about strategies that are used in comic books for showing speech and showing loud noises or action. And lastly, I'm going to record the words experience discomfort. And these are interesting ones that have come up for me. People have been talking about how when you're learning things or unlearning things, it can be uncomfortable. And again, I'm thinking back to Jane Ash Poitras and the artwork that we looked at earlier and how she incorporated words into her art. Now that I've finished drawing in the different panels of my visual listening journal, I'm going to think about adding some more details and some more color to my different panels. And so I've collected a few different materials here. And the first thing I'm going to start with is using some ink pens that I have. If you don't have ink pens, you could also use a Sharpie or a black marker. And so I'm going to start by outlining some of the pencil lines that I drew earlier. And in this panel, I'm going to think about making some of my lines really nice and dark, maybe representing how some voices are louder or stand out more than other voices. And then I will switch to a lighter, thinner pen, and maybe I'll just make some of these lines kind of wispy and broken. Perhaps showing how some voices are harder to hear. And once I have drawn in my lines, I will erase my pencil lines and it will look a lot cleaner. And now I'm going to think about adding some color to my artwork. And I've chosen a color palette, a collection of colors that is limited. And this will bring a unity to my design. So I've chosen, as you can see, some reds and some pinks and some blacks. So this is the main collection of colors that I'll be using as I add detail. As I added color and detail to my visual listening journal, I thought back to Jane Ash Poitras' artwork, Shamanic Journey, and I thought about her use of really bold colors in her artwork. Also her use of many different kinds of lines, some of which lead the viewer's eyes towards a certain point in her artwork. And so I tried to make use of some of those same strategies that she uses in her painting. I also thought about how she repeated certain shapes, such as the circle in her artwork. And I have repeated in my journal some of these repeated shapes of the speech bubbles. Now that I have completed the listening side of my journal, I'm going to flip it over, and I still have this whole empty side. And so I'm going to think about how my listening and learning can lead to action. So I'm going to take a magazine again, look through and find some pictures of people in action. And so I found a little collection here. I found this person running or in this kind of action pose, and they're nice and big. They'd fill this whole final panel. I found this really little one of this person in action, and also this example here. And so, like we did last time, I'm going to use my pencil to trace just the outline of this person that I found. And this is representing myself again. But this time, instead of just listening and collecting information, I'm thinking about how that listening and information collection affects my actions and what I'm doing now. And so on this side of my journal, I'm going to record a journey and I'm going to show a path. So I'm going to start at my first panel, and my path of action and doing is not going to be linear, which means it's not going to be completely straight. In fact, sometimes it goes backwards. Learning can be a difficult process and we don't always go forward. Once I finished drawing the pencil lines on this side of my journal, I outlined them all with my ink pen, and I erased the extra pencil marks and then added some color using my same limited color palette as I used on the other side. And now I've thought about some items I can add to this path of doing that are inspired by and informed by the listening and the learning. For example, I've included that I talked with some friends and some coworkers about some of my ideas for this video and this activity. And they shared new ideas and information with me. And some of the things on here are also goals, ideas about actions I could take. And so this part of my journal will hopefully continue to change and be added to. Today we've looked closely at an artwork by the artist Jane Ash Poitras, and inspired by some aspects of her artwork, we have created a visual listening and doing journal in which we've thought about some ways to visually record aspects of our own listening and learning journeys. And now that you've finished your visual listening journal, you could think about ways you might share it with other people. Perhaps it's something personal and something that you'll hold on to and reflect on over time, but you could also think about who you might want to share it with. I've thought about sharing mine with members of my own family, and specifically my daughter, and talking to her about what some of the specific panels in my journal mean to me. We would absolutely love to see the art that you've created, and if you like, you could share images of your artwork with us using the hashtag AFK from home and posting your artwork on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me today, and please do check back for another video and art activity from Artists for Kids next week.